Chosen one, draw your attention inward and hold it there. Something has felt different lately, and you know it. There has been a weight pressing against your spirit, a heaviness that sleep did not dissolve, and prayer did not immediately lift. It has not felt like ordinary stress. It has not felt like a passing mood. It has felt targeted, deliberate, almost strategic. You may have searched for a psychological explanation. You may have wondered if you were simply exhausted, overwhelmed, or losing your edge. But what you have been sensing is not random. It is not accidental. And it is not a sign that you are failing. This crushing pressure was a counsel decision. What you have been experiencing is not depression disguised as destiny. It is not a meaningless spiritual attack sent without purpose. There are seasons of testing that come quietly, and then there are moments when heaven allows your life to be placed at the center of a larger conversation. Just as in the days of Job, when the accuser stood before the throne and pointed at a faithful servant, there are times when your name is mentioned in rooms you cannot see. There are discussions about capacity, endurance, authority, and readiness. And in this moment, your life became part of that agenda. The accuser did what he always does. He pointed at the visible chaos. He highlighted the exhaustion in your body, the strain in your finances, the misunderstandings in your relationships. He mocked the delay. He suggested that the pressure would break you. He argued that the weight would cause you to quit. From a surface perspective, the evidence seemed convincing. You have been tired. You have questioned yourself. You have wondered how much longer you can sustain this pace without seeing tangible change. But what you did not see is more important than what you did feel. God did not hide you. He did not shield you from the conversation. He did not excuse you from the examination. Instead, he allowed your life to be observed. And then he stood and made a declaration that shifted the atmosphere of that council. He did not say you were fragile. He did not say you were failing. He did not say you needed to be removed from the pressure. He presented you as the example. He declared that what looks like breaking is actually forging. What looks like strain is actually strengthening. What looks like delay is actually design. You are not breaking. You are becoming the new standard. A standard is not established in comfort. It is set under tension. It is proven under resistance. The reason the pressure has intensified is because your endurance is being measured at a higher level. This is not about whether you can survive inconvenience. This is about whether you can carry influence. It is about whether you can remain aligned when circumstances contradict your calling. The heaviness you feel is not a sign of collapse. It is the weight of capacity expanding. When heaven chooses the life as a reference point, that life goes through scrutiny, not to shame it, but to showcase it. Your response to adversity is being recorded. Your discipline in silence is being noted. Your refusal to curse the process is being witnessed. The very areas where you feel weakest are the areas being used to demonstrate what alignment truly looks like in this generation. That is why this message is not casual inspiration. It is a briefing. You are being informed because you are involved. You are being prepared because you are positioned. This is instruction for survival under pressure and activation under scrutiny. You cannot afford to interpret this season incorrectly. If you label divine testing as personal failure, you will fight the wrong battle. If you misidentify strategic pressure as random attack, you will exhaust yourself trying to escape something that was designed to elevate you. This is not the moment to retreat. It is the moment to understand. The crushing pressure was not sent to destroy you. It was permitted to define you. Heaven has already made its declaration. The only question left is whether you will align your perception with that verdict. You are not the victim of a chaotic season. You are the example in a decisive one. And everything that follows from this point forward will depend on how you carry that revelation. Now that you understand the crushing pressure was not random but deliberate, you must step with me into what I call the Hall of Records, the realm where patterns are examined and destinies are measured not by comfort, but by capacity. Most people around you are living by old rules that were designed for survival, not significance. They wake up, react to circumstances, negotiate small victories, and accept average results as the natural ceiling of life. Their spiritual lives function within predictable boundaries. They pray when convenient, believe when it is easy, and retreat when resistance rises. There is no shame in that level of living, but it is not your assignment. You have noticed that your journey does not follow the same rhythm. Every time you attempt to move forward, opposition intensifies. Every time you take a step of faith, something pushes back with disproportionate force. You have asked yourself why your road seems narrower, steeper, and more heavily guarded than others. The answer is not that you are cursed. The answer is that you are calibrated differently. You are not living under average rules because you are not designed for average outcomes. The resistance you face is not proof of deficiency, but evidence of designation. In the Hall of Records, heaven does not evaluate you by comparison to the crowd. It evaluates you by blueprint. And your blueprint reads, prototype. In manufacturing, a prototype is the first fully realized version of a new design. It is not the final mass-produced product. It is the original that proves the concept. It carries the vision before the vision becomes common. Because it is first, it carries pressure that later versions will never experience. Engineers do not treat the prototype gently. They do not preserve it in glass. They stress it. They freeze it, heat it, compress it, drop it, and push it beyond expected limits. Not because they want it to fail, but because they need to know what it can endure. The prototype is subjected to conditions more severe than what the final product will ever face. Its ability to survive determines the standard for everything that follows. That is the stage you are in. You are not being crushed randomly. You are being stress-tested intentionally. When finances tighten, when relationships strain, when opportunities delay, it feels personal. It feels like punishment. But in the language of heaven, it is validation. Stress tests are not designed to destroy a prototype. They are designed to reveal its strength. If the design cannot survive pressure, it is adjusted. If it survives, it becomes the benchmark. You are being tested because heaven already sees durability in you. If you were fragile by design, you would not be placed under this level of evaluation. The fact that the pressure has increased means the capacity has already been recognized. This is why the resistance feels disproportionate. The enemy does not waste resources on average assignments. He attacks according to impact. If your life were meant to remain within predictable limits, the opposition would remain predictable as well. But when your obedience threatens to redefine what is possible for others, resistance escalates. You have felt like the entire kingdom of darkness mobilizes the moment you gain momentum. That reaction is not coincidence. It is confirmation. The prototype must be proven before the standard is released. Imagine again that heavenly council you were introduced to. It is not a chaotic courtroom. It is a structured realm of observation. Angels observe patterns. Strategies are discussed. Assignments are weighed. Your life is not being glanced at casually. It is being studied. Every time you choose integrity over shortcut, that decision is recorded. Every time you remain faithful in silence, that endurance is noted. Every time you refuse to collapse under emotional strain, that resilience becomes data. The Hall of Records is not merely poetic language. It represents the reality that your process is documented. Not to trap you, but to certify you. You must understand something crucial. A prototype is never judged by how comfortable it feels during testing. It is judged by whether it maintains function under pressure. You have interpreted discomfort as danger, but discomfort in your season is calibration. The heat you feel is refining structural integrity. The delays you experience are reinforcing internal alignment. Heaven is not watching to see if you look graceful. It is watching to see if you remain aligned. The prototype is not applauded during testing. It is examined. Later, when the standard is established, people will see only the polished outcome. They will not see the nights you wrestled with doubt. They will not see the moments when your body felt too tired to continue. But those moments are precisely what certify you. This is why comparison has been such a trap for you. You look at others who seem to advance effortlessly. Their doors open easily. Their platforms grow smoothly. Their resources multiply without visible strain. And you ask why your path demands so much endurance. But you are comparing a prototype under testing to products already released under established standards. Once the benchmark is set, later versions benefit from it. You are in the phase where the benchmark is being created. The path is harder because you are cutting it. The air is thinner because you are climbing first. The Heavenly Council observes not only your actions, but your response to pressure. Do you become bitter or do you become deeper? Do you compromise or do you clarify your convictions? Do you collapse inward or do you expand in faith? Every response is part of the evaluation. You have wondered why small mistakes seem to carry heavier consequences in your life. It is because precision matters at prototype level. The first version must be accurate. There is less margin for distortion because what you establish becomes reference for others. Your life is not just about personal comfort. It is about generational influence. And here's the truth that may steady you. Stress tests are not indefinite. They have phases. Engineers do not test endlessly. They test until the design is validated. The intensity you are experiencing will not last forever, but it will last long enough to certify you. That is why quitting now would distort the process. If the prototype fractures under pressure, the standard must be reset. But if it holds, the blueprint becomes law. The Hall of Records is not cold. It is purposeful. Heaven is not indifferent to your fatigue. It recognizes it. It measures it. It factors it into the equation. But it also sees the reinforcement happening beneath the surface. Your spiritual muscles are thickening. Your discernment is sharpening. Your emotional resilience is stabilizing. You feel stretched because you are expanding. You feel exposed because you are being displayed. Not to humiliate you, but to prove through you what alignment can sustain. This generation needs a new benchmark. The old rules produced survival believers. The new season requires resilient leaders, people who can endure uncertainty without abandoning conviction, people who can hold authority without becoming arrogant, people who can sustain blessing without losing humility. The prototype must demonstrate that such a life is possible. That is why your process has been so intense. You are not just building a testimony, you are establishing a template. You may not feel strong, but strength is not measured by the absence of pressure. It is measured by sustained function within it. You are still here. You are still aligned. You are still seeking clarity instead of surrendering to confusion. That continuity under strain is evidence that the design is holding. Heaven is not asking whether you feel ready. It is observing whether you remain faithful. And every day you choose alignment despite exhaustion, you move closer to certification. The resistance you face is proportionate to the influence you carry. The stress tests you endure are proportionate to the standard you are setting. And the observation you sense is not paranoia. It is participation in a larger narrative. Your life is being used to establish a new benchmark for this generation. Not a benchmark of perfection, but of perseverance. Not a benchmark of ease, but of endurance. Not a benchmark of image, but of integrity. You are not the problem. You are the prototype. And prototypes are never ordinary. Section 2. The meaning of the standard, no-saw revelation. Now that you understand you are the prototype under examination, you must also understand what heaven is actually building through you. Because the language of standard is not symbolic decoration, it is strategic revelation. When Isaiah 59:19 declares, "When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him." Most believers imagine protection in the form of a barrier, a divine wall blocking the waters. But the ancient Hebrew word translated as standard is no-saw, And no saw does not describe a shield placed in front of someone. It describes something raised high above the terrain, something elevated, so it can be seen from a distance. No saw is a signal, a banner, a landmark that glistens in the wilderness and draws scattered travelers toward direction. It is not defensive architecture. It is visible authority. This changes everything about how you interpret your season. If you thought God was simply going to hide you behind protection, whenever opposition rises, you will misunderstand the intensity you are facing. The Spirit does not merely block the flood. He lifts a signal in the midst of it. And sometimes that signal is not an object. Sometimes that signal is a person. The enemy comes like a flood not only to drown the individual, but to obscure the visibility of the standard. If the signal is erased, those who are searching for direction remain lost. That is why your life has been elevated at the same time it has been attacked. You are not being crushed because you are weak. You are being targeted because you are raised. A standard in ancient warfare was planted at the highest visible point. It told soldiers where to rally, where to regroup, where to find leadership when chaos erupted. If the battlefield filled with smoke and confusion, the raised standard became the only clear reference point. To destroy the morale of an army, enemies would aim for the standard bearer, not because the banner itself was dangerous, but because its presence unified direction. When the standard fell, confusion spread. When it remained standing, order was restored. You are beginning to see why resistance escalated in your life the moment you began to rise in clarity and alignment. The enemy does not fear your emotions. He fears your visibility. He fears what happens when others see you endure and realize endurance is possible. Isaiah's prophecy is not passive comfort. It is active positioning. The Spirit lifts up a no-saw against the flood. Notice the word against. The flood does not come after the standard is lifted. It comes because the standard is lifted. The presence of the standard provokes confrontation. Visibility invites reaction. You have wondered why certain seasons intensified once you committed fully to your calling. You thought obedience would reduce opposition. Instead, obedience exposed you. But exposure is not vulnerability in the way you think. It is placement. You were raised so others could locate direction in the dark dot. When God lifts you, He is not showcasing you for applause. He is positioning you for impact. There are people in your bloodline, in your community, in your generation who are navigating confusion. They are surrounded by emotional floods, financial floods, ideological floods. They cannot see stable ground. And in the middle of that chaos, your resilience becomes visible. Your consistency becomes visible. Your refusal to collapse becomes visible. You become a landmark. That is the meaning of no-saw. You are not simply surviving privately. You are signaling publicly even when you do not realize it. This is why the enemy attacks with such intensity. A hidden believer does not require strategic disruption. A visible standard does. If you were quietly struggling in obscurity without influence, resistance would remain minimal. But the moment your endurance began to inspire others, the moment your faithfulness became reference, you were marked as a landmark. Landmarks must be obscured for travelers to remain lost. So the flood increases, the noise amplifies, the accusations intensify. Not because you are failing, but because you are visible. Visibility explains the weight you feel. It explains why your tests feel amplified compared to others. It explains why your mistakes seem magnified and your victories contested. When something is raised, it is seen from every angle. The enemy studies your reactions because he hopes to distort the signal. If he can provoke bitterness, the signal flickers. If he can trigger compromise, the banner tears. If he can exhaust your nervous system, the light dims. He is not trying merely to inconvenience you. He is trying to blur the direction others might find through you. But here is what you must understand deeply. The flood does not define the standard. The standard defines the flood. The intensity of attack reveals the significance of placement. You are not being lifted accidentally. Heaven does not elevate without purpose. When the spirit lifts a no-saw, it is because direction must be restored. You may feel exposed, but exposure in divine positioning is empowerment. You are elevated not for humiliation, but for illumination. There is a cost to being visible. You cannot blend into the average when you are raised above it. The standard does not hide in the valley. It stands on the hill. From that height, winds hit harder. Scrutiny increases, but so does influence. You have sensed that people watch you differently. Some root for you. Some critique you. Some project their expectations onto you. That awareness can feel overwhelming, but it is confirmation that you are not invisible. You are placed, and placement brings responsibility. The no-saw must remain upright regardless of the weather. The banner bearer does not lower the flag because rain falls. He grips tighter. You have been strengthened not merely to survive storms, but to remain standing within them. The flood is temporary. The standard is strategic. And the reason you cannot retreat into smallness is because smallness would confuse those who depend on your signal. Think about how landmarks function in wilderness terrain. Travelers orient themselves by what remains fixed. If the landmark shifts with every wind, navigation collapses. Consistency is what creates trust. You are learning consistency under pressure. You are learning how to remain aligned when circumstances fluctuate. That alignment is what makes you reliable, and reliability is what makes you worthy of being lifted. The opposition you face is not random hostility. It is targeted interference. When you step into clarity, someone else finds courage. When you break a generational limitation, someone else recognizes possibility. When you maintain integrity under temptation, someone else learns endurance. You may not know their names, you may never meet them, but influence does not require proximity. It requires visibility. The meaning of no-saw is not ego elevation. It is strategic revelation. You are not the hero of the story. You are the signal within it. The light you carry does not originate from you. It reflects alignment with the throne. That is why humility must accompany elevation. A standard that forgets its source collapses under pride, but a standard that remembers its commissioning stands firm. This is also why you cannot afford to misinterpret resistance as rejection. The flood is proof of your position. If you were irrelevant, the waters would bypass you. But because you are raised, currents crash against you, and yet you remain. That remaining is not accidental endurance. It is empowered stability. You are the rallying point for others still lost. Whether you feel ready or not, whether you feel polished or not, you have been lifted. And visibility will always explain the intensity of opposition. Do not lower yourself to reduce pressure. Do not dim your light to avoid attention. The Spirit lifted you because direction is needed. Stand, hold your alignment. Let the flood come and recede. The no-saw remains. Now that you understand you are the prototype and the raised standard, you must confront something deeply practical that many spiritual teachings ignore, because elevation in the spirit does not automatically mean ease in the body. Spiritual promotion creates nervous system overload. When heaven increases your assignment, your internal circuitry feels it before your circumstances reflect it. You may sense clarity in your calling, but your body feels exhausted. You may receive insight in prayer, yet wake up with pressure behind your eyes. You may feel spiritually expanded while physically drained. This tension is not hypocrisy. It is a frequency war unfolding inside you. When your spirit is upgraded, your nervous system must adapt. The human brain operates in measurable electrical patterns known as frequencies. Beta frequency is the dominant state for most modern adults. It is the rhythm of alertness, problem-solving, and survival. In beta, the mind scans for threats. It calculates risk. It anticipates loss. It asks what could go wrong. This state is useful in short bursts. It keeps you safe in traffic. It helps you meet deadlines. But when beta becomes permanent, it turns from tool to prison. Stress hormones stay elevated. The body remains on guard. Anxiety becomes baseline. Sleep loses depth. And the mind struggles to access creativity and calm. Now consider what happens when heaven entrusts you with a larger mandate. Your spirit begins operating at a higher bandwidth. Insight becomes sharper, discernment becomes quicker, intuition becomes clearer. You sense divine nudges before logic explains them. This is closer to what neuroscience identifies as theta frequency. Theta is slower than beta. It is the bridge between waking consciousness and deep inner awareness. It is the state associated with imagination, vision, pattern recognition, and profound learning. In theta, the mind becomes receptive rather than reactive. It listens instead of scans. It creates instead of defends. Ancient prophets did not use modern terminology, but they understood this state. When scripture speaks of visions of deep sleep, encounters of divine downloads in caves and wilderness, it is describing a shift from survival awareness to spiritual receptivity. They knew how to quiet the external noise so they could hear internal instruction. They were not constantly in beta. They were able to move into a receptive frequency where heaven's communication could land clearly. But you live in an era engineered to keep you locked in beta. Modern distractions trap the brain in perpetual alertness. Blue light exposure before sleep suppresses melatonin and reduces deep rest. Social media algorithms are designed to trigger dopamine spikes, followed by micro-withdrawals, keeping the brain craving stimulation. News cycles amplify outrage and urgency. Processed food disrupts gut health, which in turn influences mood regulation through the gut-brain axis. Notifications, deadlines, constant comparison, financial pressure, and relational tension combine to create a culture of hypervigilance. Your nervous system rarely receives the signal that it is safe to rest. And when the body does not feel safe, it cannot easily shift into theta. Here is where the frequency war intensifies. Your spirit may be receiving promotion, but your brain is still running survival code. It is like installing advanced software on outdated hardware. The system overheats, it glitches, it freezes. You interpret this as personal failure. You say, if I were truly strong, I would not feel this exhausted. But exhaustion does not mean weakness. It can mean mismatch. You are attempting to carry a high-frequency assignment with a nervous system conditioned for low-frequency survival. The enemy understands this dynamic more than most believers do. He does not need to attack your spirit directly if he can keep your nervous system overloaded. If you remain stuck in beta, you stay reactive. You focus on immediate threats rather than long-term vision. You argue instead of strategize. You defend instead of design. Burnout becomes his ally. Distraction becomes his weapon. He floods your attention so that you cannot sustain depth. He exhausts your body so that you question your calling. He provokes stress so that you misinterpret promotion as pressure to escape. Notice how the flood metaphor aligns with this. A flood is not always a single catastrophic wave. Sometimes it is constant saturation. Your inbox floods, your schedule floods, your mind floods. You drown not because of one event, but because of accumulation. The enemy exploits burnout to delay breakthrough. If he can keep you too tired to think clearly, you will postpone decisive action. If he can keep you too anxious to rest, you will operate from fear rather than faith. If he can keep you oscillating between stress and collapse, you will struggle to hold the frequency required for your next level. But this battle is not purely psychological. It is neurological and spiritual simultaneously. The brain is not separate from the spirit. It is the interface through which spiritual insight translates into practical execution. If the interface is overloaded, the message distorts. You may receive divine strategy, but if your nervous system is overwhelmed, you lack the clarity to implement it. That is why recalibration matters. That is why rest is not laziness, but warfare. That is why silence is not weakness, but strength. You must learn to recognize when your body is signaling overload. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating. These are not signs that you are unfit for the assignment. They are signals that your nervous system needs recalibration. Deep breathing activates the vagus nerve and shifts the body toward parasympathetic regulation. Extended time in quiet reflection increases alpha and theta waves, reducing stress reactivity. Consistent sleep hygiene stabilizes mood and cognitive function. These are not secular tricks. They are stewardship practices. If you are the standard, you must steward your system. Spiritual promotion without physical stewardship leads to collapse. But spiritual promotion with neurological awareness leads to stability. You are not called to ignore your biology. You are called to align it. The prophets fasted and withdrew not only for spiritual reasons, but for physiological reset. Solitude calmed their nervous systems. Nature regulated their senses. They were not weak for needing rest. They were wise. Understand this clearly. The enemy wants you in constant beta because beta is reactive. In beta, you chase problems. In theta, you perceive patterns. In beta, you fight symptoms. In theta, you design solutions. In beta, you defend yourself. In theta, you lead others. The frequency war determines your posture. Will you live from reaction or revelation? You cannot eliminate beta entirely. You need it for daily tasks. But you must not live there permanently. You must create rhythms that allow you to shift. Intentional silence. Reduced digital noise. Focused prayer not as frantic pleading, but as quiet alignment. These are frequency transitions. When you feel the static in your mind, imagine adjusting an internal dial. Slow your breathing. Lengthen your exhale. Let your thoughts settle. As your body calms, your perception expands. That expansion is not imagination. It is access. The battle you are in is sophisticated. It is not merely about temptation or opposition. It is about bandwidth. Can you sustain clarity in a noisy world? Can you maintain peace in a culture addicted to urgency? Can you hold vision when your nervous system wants to panic? That is the real war, and winning it does not require superhuman strength. It requires awareness and discipline. You are not failing because you feel overwhelmed. You are adjusting to elevation. Your spirit has been entrusted with more light. Your brain must adapt to carry it. Do not condemn yourself for needing recalibration. Embrace it. Protect your mental environment as fiercely as you protect your doctrine. Guard your attention. Limit what inflames you unnecessarily. Prioritize what restores you strategically. The frequency war is real, but it is winnable. You are not at the mercy of your nervous system. You can train it. You can regulate it. You can create habits that shift you from survival into strategy. And as you learn to stabilize your internal state, the external flood loses power. Because when you operate from clarity rather than chaos, you become unstoppable. The enemy cannot outmaneuver a mind that is both spiritually aligned and neurologically regulated. This is your advantage. You are becoming aware of the interface between heaven's assignment and your human system. That awareness transforms pressure into preparation. You are not merely enduring the flood. You are learning how to command the waves. Now that you understand the frequency war unfolding within you, you must face a humbling but liberating truth. Willpower is unsustainable fuel. You have tried to push yourself into alignment through sheer determination. You have clenched your teeth, tightened your schedule, forced productivity, forced positivity, forced endurance. And for a while, willpower works. It carries you through deadlines. It helps you resist temptation. It gives you bursts of momentum. But willpower is a combustion engine. It burns hot and fast. It depletes. And when it depletes, you feel shame thinking you lack discipline. The reality is simpler. You are using the wrong fuel for the level you are called to sustain. Survival mode runs on willpower. Genius mode runs on alignment. Recalibration is the bridge between the two. Recalibration is not about learning new information. It is about restoring original design. When a compass becomes distorted by magnetic interference, you do not throw it away. You reset it. When a musical instrument falls out of tune, you do not replace it. You adjust tension until resonance returns. Your mind works the same way. Stress, noise, trauma, distraction, comparison, and fatigue have pulled your internal strings out of tune. You do not need a new brain. You need recalibration. Frequency. Recalibration begins with understanding that your nervous system can be trained to shift states. You are not permanently trapped in beta. You are not condemned to operate in anxiety. The human brain is neuroplastic. It reshapes itself according to repeated patterns. If you repeatedly expose it to chaos, it wires for chaos. If you repeatedly guide it into stillness, it wires for stability. The prophets understood this intuitively. They withdrew, they fasted, they listened. They created environments where the noise dropped low enough for insight to rise. This is where the concept often referred to as the genius wave becomes practical rather than mystical. At its core, the genius wave represents a restoration of theta dominance. It is not about becoming intellectually superior. It is about returning to the frequency in which intuition, creativity, and divine communication flow naturally. Neuroscience confirms that children operate more frequently in theta than adults. This is why imagination feels effortless to them. As responsibilities increase and stress accumulates, beta overtakes theta. You lose ease, you gain vigilance. But theta never disappears completely. It becomes buried beneath static. The genius wave is simply the intentional activation of that buried state, whether through guided audio frequencies, meditation, breathwork, contemplative prayer, or intentional sensory reduction. The goal is the same: reduce beta interference and allow theta coherence. When you listen to sound patterns designed to entrain the brain towards slower, synchronized rhythms, your neural circuits begin to calm. Cortisol decreases, heart rate stabilizes, creativity reemerges. The mind stops scanning for threats and starts perceiving patterns. You move from reaction to revelation. This is not fantasy. It is physiology cooperating with spirituality. Clearing static is essential if you are to hold a divine mandate. Static in a radio signal distorts transmission. Static in the mind distorts perception. You may receive instruction in prayer, but if your internal static is loud, you misinterpret it. You second guess. You hesitate. You delay. When static reduces, clarity increases. Decisions feel less frantic. Direction feels more coherent. You stop chasing every opportunity and begin discerning which ones align. Understand this carefully: holding frequency equals holding blessing. Many people pray for breakthrough but are not internally stable enough to sustain it. When opportunity finally arrives, their nervous system panics. They self-sabotage. They overcommit. They fear losing what they gained. Instability leaks through behavior. The blessing does not disappear because God withdraws it. It collapses because it cannot be held. Stability is not emotional numbness. It is regulated capacity. It is the ability to experience pressure without imploding. It is the ability to experience success without inflating. Recalibration trains this stability. When you practice shifting into theta regularly, you strengthen neural pathways associated with calm awareness. You expand your window of tolerance. Stressful events no longer throw you into chaos instantly. You pause. You breathe. You respond rather than react. This is the difference between survival and genius state. Survival reacts to immediate stimuli. Genius perceives long-term patterns. Survival asks, "How do I escape this discomfort?" Genius asks, "What is this discomfort teaching me?" Survival tightens. Genius expands. When you are recalibrated, your thinking becomes spacious. You notice connections others miss. You sense timing intuitively. You anticipate consequences without fear dominating you. The enemy understands that if you achieve this stability, his leverage weakens. He cannot manipulate a regulated mind easily. He cannot provoke a reactive spiral quickly. Burnout loses its grip. Distraction loses its seduction. You begin to see through strategies that once entangled you. This is why maintaining a recalibration practice is not luxury. It is warfare. Imagine your mind as a lake. In beta overload, the surface is choppy. Every external event creates ripples. You cannot see the bottom clearly. When you shift into theta, the water settles. Reflection sharpens. Depth becomes visible. You're not adding new water. You're calming what is already there. The mandate God placed within you was always present. Static prevented you from perceiving it fully. The breakthrough you are anticipating does not depend solely on external timing. It depends on internal stability. If you cannot hold focus, you cannot hold vision. If you cannot hold peace, you cannot hold power. If you cannot hold clarity, you cannot hold calling. This is not condemnation. It is invitation. Recalibration offers you the ability to strengthen your internal container before overflow arrives. There is also a humility required here. You must accept that pushing harder is not always the solution. Sometimes slowing down accelerates growth. Sometimes 7 minutes of intentional neural entrainment does more for your future than 7 hours of frantic productivity. Consistency matters more than intensity. The brain rewires through repetition. Short daily recalibration builds more resilience than sporadic extremes. As you incorporate these rhythms, something subtle but profound happens. You begin to trust yourself differently, not in arrogance but in alignment. Your decisions feel less desperate. Your reactions feel less explosive. You sense when something is misaligned without overanalyzing it. This is the genius state emerging. It is not dramatic. It is steady. The flood may still rise externally, but internally you remain grounded. And grounding is what allows you to remain raised. You cannot serve as a standard if you collapse internally. You cannot guide others if your own mind is fragmented. Stability becomes your silent advantage. Remember, recalibration is not about escaping humanity. It is about stewarding it. Your body and brain are not obstacles to your calling. They are instruments. Instruments require tuning. When tuned properly, they produce resonance. When out of tune, they produce noise. You are learning to tune yourself. And as you do, you will notice that blessings no longer feel like threats. Responsibility no longer feels like burden. Visibility no longer feels like exposure. They feel like natural extensions of capacity. Because you have strengthened the container, overflow does not intimidate you. Your breakthrough depends on stability. Not perfection. Not constant emotional high. Stability. The kind that allows you to remain present in pressure and grounded in growth. The kind that allows you to hold frequency without flickering. You are moving from survival into genius state. Not through force, but through recalibration. Not through striving, but through alignment. And as you clear the static, you will discover something astonishing. The mandate you thought was too heavy was never the problem. The interference was. Remove the interference and the light flows naturally. Now that you are learning to stabilize your frequency and hold your position as the raised standard, you must understand that elevation always triggers precision attacks. The enemy rarely charges recklessly when you are close to breakthrough. He shifts tactics. He becomes strategic. He studies your patterns, your fatigue points, your emotional vulnerabilities. What I'm about to describe is not random temptation. It is what I call the 3-sniper protocol. Snipers do not create loud chaos. They aim quietly. They wait patiently. They fire when you least expect it. And each of these strategies is designed not to destroy you instantly, but to misalign you subtly. The first sniper is financial temptation. Notice I did not say financial hardship. You have already endured hardship. You have already survived lack. Poverty did not break you, so the strategy shifts. The sniper presents a shortcut. An opportunity appears that looks like relief. A deal arrives that promises quick elevation. A compromise whispers that bending one small principle will unlock immediate overflow. The temptation is subtle because it aligns with your legitimate desire for stability. You are tired of the struggle. You are tired of waiting. You want provision to flow without friction. And suddenly, something offers exactly that, but at a cost. The cost is rarely obvious. It might require silence when you should speak truth. It might require partnership with values you know are misaligned. It might require exaggeration, manipulation, or hidden dishonesty. The compromise seems minor. It's just business, the voice suggests. Everyone does this. But the sniper is not testing your intelligence. He is testing your integrity. Integrity is the structural beam of the standard. If the beam cracks, the banner tilts. You are being evaluated for overflow, and overflow amplifies whatever foundation exists beneath it. If compromise enters before abundance, compromise multiplies with abundance. Understand this deeply: integrity is tested before overflow because overflow magnifies character. If you remain aligned in scarcity, you prove you can remain aligned in abundance. Financial temptation is not about money. It is about alignment. If you trade your principles for speed, you distort the standard. And once distorted, rebuilding takes longer than waiting ever would have. The sniper knows impatience is more dangerous than poverty. He aims for your urgency. He wants you to believe that blessing delayed is blessing denied. But divine timing is not absence. It is preparation. The offer that pressures you to compromise is not a shortcut. It is a detour disguised as relief. The second sniper moves differently. Relationship distraction rarely arrives looking harmful. It arrives with warmth, with chemistry, with affirmation. After seasons of isolation and testing, your heart longs for connection. You have carried weight alone. You have endured misunderstandings. You crave companionship that understands your journey. And then suddenly someone appears who seems to see you clearly. Conversations feel effortless. The timing feels magnetic. Emotional intensity rises quickly. But intensity is not always confirmation. Timing is the key detail. When you are stabilizing your frequency and nearing breakthrough, distractions often wear the face of destiny. The sniper understands that emotional entanglement can derail focus faster than financial compromise. When your heart is activated intensely, your discernment can blur. You justify red flags. You rush intimacy. You attach before alignment is verified. The relationship may not be inherently evil. It may simply be mistimed. And mistimed alignment drains energy required for mandate execution. Sudden emotional intensity can cloud long-term clarity. You start adjusting your schedule, your priorities, your mental space around this person. Conversations consume your thoughts. Anticipation replaces discipline. The sniper does not need you to fall into obvious sin. He only needs you to divide your attention. Divided attention weakens signal strength. You cannot be a raised standard if your focus fragments. The enemy knows you crave affirmation. He sends someone who affirms loudly but anchors loosely. If God did not confirm this connection before it appeared, slow down. Speed is often the disguise of distraction. The third sniper is the most intimate because it comes from within. Bitterness of the past is not an external offer. It is an internal whisper. When external attacks fail to break you, the enemy revisits old memories. He reminds you of mistakes you made years ago. He replays failures at midnight when your guard is low. He whispers that you are unworthy of elevation, that you are still the person who struggled, that you are pretending to be transformed. This sniper does not attack your future directly. He attacks your identity. Old identity whispers are powerful because they feel familiar. You remember the insecurity. You remember the shame. You remember the version of yourself that reacted poorly, compromised, or collapsed. And the enemy suggests that version is your true self. Promotion feels fraudulent. Visibility feels dangerous. You think, what if they discover who I really am? Midnight accusations intensify because fatigue lowers resistance. When your body is tired, your thoughts lose boundaries. Doubt seeps in. But you must respond differently now. You are not the prototype under construction anymore. You are the approved standard. Approval does not mean perfection. It means authorization. You have grown. You have repented. You have matured. The old identity is archived, not active. When bitterness attempts to rise, do not wrestle it endlessly. Do not defend yourself against every memory. Simply reaffirm alignment. Say internally, that version of me no longer governs my decisions. Bitterness feeds on rehearsal. Starve it by standing in your updated identity. These three snipers target different aspects of your being. Financial temptation targets your principles. Relationship distraction targets your focus. Bitterness of the past targets your identity. If any of these three succeed, your frequency destabilizes. But awareness neutralizes advantage. You are not paranoid. You are prepared. Notice how each sniper attempts to create urgency. Take the deal now. Commit emotionally now. Believe the accusation now. Urgency is their shared weapon. Divine alignment rarely pressures. It confirms with peace. If something requires immediate compromise, immediate attachment, or immediate self-condemnation, pause. Snipers rely on reaction speed. You counter with regulated response. You must also understand that resisting these attacks strengthens you further. Every time you reject a shortcut, your integrity deepens. Every time you slow down an intense emotional pull, your discernment sharpens. Every time you refuse to rehearse old shame, your identity stabilizes. The enemy's attempts become training. The very strategy meant to derail you refines you. At the raised standard cannot afford internal cracks. Not because you are judged harshly, but because others orient themselves by you. If you bend under temptation, those watching may misinterpret compromise as permission. If you fragment in distraction, those observing may question consistency. If you shrink under old identity, those seeking courage may retreat. You are not responsible for everyone's choices, but you are responsible for your signal clarity. The three sniper protocol is not meant to scare you. It is meant to sharpen you. You are not being ambushed blindly. You are being informed strategically. Stand guard without paranoia. Remain open without naivety. Maintain humility without self-condemnation. Financial offers will come. Emotional connections will appear. Memories will surface. None of these are inherently destructive. They become destructive only when they distort alignment. You are equipped to recognize the difference now. Integrity over immediacy. Discernment over intensity. Identity over insecurity. When you hold these lines, the snipers lose leverage. And when they lose leverage, your stability strengthens. You are too close to breakthrough to misinterpret these tests. They are not evidence that you are weak. They are evidence that you are near expansion. The enemy does not aim at those standing still. He aims at those advancing. But you are not advancing recklessly. You are advancing aware. And awareness transforms threat into training. And as you grow in awareness of these three snipers, you begin to realize something even more strategic. They do not operate randomly or simultaneously without order. They often come in sequence. First the offer, then the emotional pull, then the internal accusation. If the shortcut fails, distraction tries. If distraction fails, shame attacks. The goal is always the same: destabilize the standard before the promotion manifests. This is why self-awareness is not luxury for you. It is protection. The raised standard cannot afford unconscious living. You cannot drift emotionally and expect clarity to remain intact. You cannot indulge every feeling and assume discernment will automatically correct you. You are at a level where small misalignments have amplified consequences, not because God is harsh, but because visibility multiplies influence. Let us go deeper into the financial sniper for a moment. There is a reason financial compromise is so effective. Money represents security in the natural realm. When security feels unstable, fear amplifies. And when fear amplifies, reasoning distorts. You begin to justify what you once rejected. Just this once. Just until I stabilize. I will fix it later. But compromise is rarely temporary. It trains your nervous system to associate relief with bending truth. That pattern once formed repeats under pressure. The enemy understands habit formation. If he can train you to trade integrity for relief, once he increases the probability, you will do it again when stakes are higher. But when you refuse the shortcut, something powerful happens neurologically and spiritually. Your brain rewires toward resilience. You prove to yourself that discomfort does not control you. That proof builds confidence, not arrogance. Confidence rooted in self-mastery. And self-mastery is dangerous to the enemy because it cannot be manipulated easily. Now consider the relational sniper more deeply. Sudden emotional intensity is not always romance. It can also be conflict. Someone may provoke you aggressively right when you are gaining momentum. An old wound may reopen through confrontation. The sniper does not care whether the emotion is affection or anger. He cares about activation. Activated emotion consumes attention. Attention is currency. Wherever your attention goes, your energy follows. If your energy follows distraction, your mandate slows. You must ask yourself in these moments, does this connection increase clarity or create confusion? Does this interaction deepen alignment or drain discipline, true destiny? Relationships bring peace even when they challenge you. Distraction relationships bring excitement but steal focus. The difference is subtle but discernible if you remain regulated. And then there is the bitterness sniper, the most insidious because it feels like your own voice. It arrives when you are quiet. It revisits memories with sharp precision. It says, remember when you failed. Remember when you embarrassed yourself. Remember how people looked at you. These thoughts are not neutral reflections. They are attempts to re-anchor you in an expired identity. Identity determines behavior. If you believe you are still the insecure version of yourself, you will act cautiously and shrink from opportunities. If you believe you are still the unstable version of yourself, you will sabotage stable moments. Bitterness also functions as an emotional anesthetic. It convinces you that staying guarded protects you from future pain. But guardedness blocks intimacy with both people and purpose. The standard cannot afford chronic guardedness. It must remain open enough to receive instruction and connection. Healing is not forgetting your past. It is refusing to let your past narrate your present. There is also a generational dimension to this. If you are the prototype and the raised standard, you are likely breaking patterns in your bloodline. Financial cycles, relationship cycles, emotional regulation cycles. The sniper attacks intensify because generational shifts threaten long-standing strongholds. When you resist compromise, you do not only change your outcome, you interrupt inherited patterns. When you refuse toxic attachment, you alter relational templates that existed before you were born. When you reject bitterness, you free your future from ancestral wounds. This is why the pressure feels historic. It is . You may also notice that when one sniper fails, the others intensify temporarily. If you resist a financial shortcut, emotional distraction may appear immediately after. If you regulate emotional intensity, old shame may resurface. Do not interpret this as regression. Interpret it as desperation. The closer you move toward stability, the louder the attempts become. But loud does not equal powerful. Awareness neutralizes momentum. Another critical insight: you cannot fight these snipers through force alone. If you try to overpower temptation with aggression, you exhaust yourself. Instead, you maintain alignment through clarity. Clarity about your values. Clarity about your timing. Clarity about your identity. When clarity stabilizes, decisions simplify. You do not wrestle endlessly. You discern quickly. This compromises integrity. No debate. This distracts focus. Slow down. This revives old identity. Reject it calmly. Calm rejection is more powerful than dramatic resistance. Drama feeds emotional intensity. Calm starves it. You must also cultivate community wisely. Being the standard does not mean being isolated. It means being selective. Share your battles with those who understand your level. Do not broadcast vulnerability to those who misinterpret it. The sniper thrives in secrecy but fails in strategic exposure. When temptation is named in safe spaces, its power diminishes. And remember this: the enemy attacks what he fears. He fears your consistency. He fears your clarity. He fears your upgrade. The 3 sniper protocol is not proof of vulnerability. It is proof of value. As you continue forward, expect offers. Expect emotional tests. Expect memories to resurface. But do not expect defeat. You are not walking unaware anymore. You recognize patterns. You regulate your nervous system. You guard your integrity. You slow down when intensity spikes. You affirm your updated identity. The raised standard does not panic when arrows fly. It remains upright. You are not under attack because you are weak. You are under precision because you are positioned. And position demands vigilance, not fear. Stay steady, stay aligned. The snipers aim, but you remain anchored. Now that you understand the pressure, the prototype process, the no-saw revelation, the frequency war, the recalibration, and the 3 sniper protocol, you need more than theory. You need evidence. You need to see what happens when someone actually walks this path all the way through. So let me bring you into a real pattern, a living example of what it looks like when a chosen one refuses to collapse under scrutiny and instead stabilizes into authority. Her name is Sarah, and she did not begin as someone visibly powerful. She began exhausted. Sarah was what many would call the spiritual pillar of her family. Everyone came to her for advice. Everyone leaned on her discernment. Everyone expected her to remain calm. But behind closed doors, she was bleeding internally. Her bank account was nearly empty. Her health had begun to decline under chronic stress. She felt like a fraud because the external perception of strength did not match the internal reality of fatigue. She was operating in constant beta, trying to hold everything together through willpower. She prayed, but she prayed from anxiety. She worked, but she worked from fear. And the more she tried to force stability, the more her nervous system revolted. What changed was not her circumstances at first. What changed was her understanding. She realized she was the prototype in her bloodline, the raised standard in her environment, and that if she continued operating in survival mode, she would sabotage her own mandate. Instead of pushing harder, she recalibrated. She committed to strategic silence and frequency discipline. Strategic silence did not mean isolation. It meant she stopped defending herself in every argument. She stopped explaining her vision to those who mocked it. She stopped broadcasting her struggles to people who could not steward her vulnerability. Silence preserved her energy. Frequency discipline meant she treated her nervous system as sacred infrastructure. Every day, she dedicated intentional time to shift out of beta, sometimes through guided theta audio, sometimes through breathwork and contemplative prayer, sometimes simply by sitting in stillness without her phone. It felt unnatural at first. Her mind resisted quiet. Her body twitched with urgency, but she persisted because she understood that stability precedes overflow. For 40 days, she built in the dark. The number 40 is not mystical coincidence. Throughout Scripture, 40 represents preparation and transition. 40 days of rain, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days of fasting. It is the space where old identity dissolves and new authority solidifies. For 40 days, Sarah did not chase visibility. She did not chase validation. She built systems quietly. She refined her skills. She regulated her emotions. She rejected shortcuts. She slowed down emotional distractions. She confronted bitterness without rehearsing it. There were days she wanted to quit. Days when the sniper of financial temptation appeared with convincing offers. Days when someone from her past reached out with emotional intensity. Days when old insecurities whispered loudly. But she recognized the pattern. She slowed down instead of reacting. She chose alignment over urgency. And something subtle began to happen. Her internal world stabilized. She slept more deeply. Her decisions felt less frantic. Her conversations became more precise. The fog that once clouded her mornings began to lift. On day 38, something shifted externally. A partner she had never met before reached out through a connection she had almost ignored weeks earlier. This was not a flashy social media breakthrough. It was a quiet email with a clear proposal. The contract offered was nearly 3 times her annual income. There was no compromise required, no manipulation, no distortion of her values. It aligned cleanly with her skill set and integrity. The blessing did not arrive through chaos. It arrived through coherence. Notice what happened. The blessing chased stability. She did not chase it through desperation. She built capacity first. And when capacity was ready, opportunity located her. This is what holding frequency truly means. When your internal state stabilizes, you emit clarity. Clarity attracts alignment. Alignment opens doors without force. Sarah did not post the contract immediately. She did not broadcast it as proof. She remained in strategic silence. She honored the process because she understood that the real victory was not the money. It was the mastery. Today, Sarah is not merely financially stable. She is emotionally regulated. She is relationally discerning. She is spiritually grounded. Her presence carries weight. People feel peace when she enters a room. Not because she pretends perfection, but because she radiates stability. She became a landmark in her community, not through hype, but through consistency. The prototype phase ended. The standard phase began. Now you must understand that this case study is not distant inspiration. It is a mirror. What happened for her is blueprint for you. But the shift requires activation. Information alone does not transform identity. There must be a moment where understanding seals into authority. This is where visualization becomes powerful. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a golden seal descending toward your mind. Not fragile gold, but molten luminous, alive with heat from the throne. It presses gently but firmly into the center of your forehead. Not burning you, but branding you. As it makes contact, you feel the static dissolve. The anxiety that once felt sharp now feels heavy in a different way. Not suffocating, solid. This is kavod. In Hebrew, kavod means glory, but its root implies weight. The heaviness in your chest is not panic anymore. It is authority settling. It is the gravity of calling anchoring you. Where fear once vibrated erratically, presence now stabilizes. You are not lighter in the sense of fragile. You are heavier in the sense of grounded. Let that image sink in. The golden seal is not fantasy. It is representation of internal authorization. When you see yourself as commissioned, your behavior shifts. You walk differently. You speak with measured clarity. You reject distractions more easily because your identity has stabilized. Anxiety transforms into authority when perception changes. The same energy that once fueled panic now fuels purpose. The same intensity that once overwhelmed you now anchors you. And now comes the declaration. Commissioning is not about ego. It is about alignment. You are not self-appointed. You are recognized. Recognized by heaven. Recognized by process. Recognized by endurance. Say internally, I am commissioned. Not as performance, as acceptance. You accept the weight. You accept the visibility. You accept the responsibility. The activation moment is quiet but decisive. You are no longer reacting to pressure as if it were punishment. You interpret it as positioning. You are no longer chasing breakthrough as if it were distant. You are stabilizing as if it were near. Because it is. Sarah's story proves the pattern. Strategic silence, frequency discipline, 40 days of hidden building, sudden breakthrough, blessing chasing stability, anxiety transforming into kavod, commissioning sealing identity. This is not mythology. It is method. And now the method becomes mandate. You are not observing someone else's rise. You are stepping into your own activation. The prototype phase refined you. The sniper phase sharpened you. The recalibration phase stabilized you. Now the commissioning phase authorizes you. You are not waiting anymore. You are walking. You have walked through the pressure, the prototype refinement, the no-saw revelation, the frequency war, the recalibration, the sniper awareness, and the activation moment. Now you stand at the threshold where understanding must become embodiment. This is no longer theory. This is sealing. So we move into a formal alignment not as ritual performance but as spiritual positioning. Father God, in the name of Yeshua, we acknowledge that this moment is not accidental. We acknowledge that the heaviness was not random, the tests were not meaningless, and the resistance was not misplacement. We stand before you, not as victims of pressure, but as vessels of promotion. Seal now what has been revealed. Align every thought, every neural pathway, every emotional response with the frequency of heaven. Where there was fragmentation, bring integration. Where there was fear, establish authority. Where there was confusion, anchor clarity. We bind doubt and delay, not through aggression, but through alignment. Every whisper that said, "You are not ready," loses authority now. Every internal hesitation rooted in old identity dissolves. Every external assignment sent to sabotage timing is neutralized. We declare that what heaven has authorized cannot be permanently postponed. Delay has refined, but it will not define. Doubt may knock, but it will not inhabit. The standard has been raised. The prototype has been validated. The recalibration has stabilized. And now we speak over the next 40 days, not as superstition, but as structured transition. Within 40 days, you will see tangible evidence of internal work manifesting externally. Not chaos, but clarity. Not desperation, but alignment. Financial doors that were previously locked will open without compromise. Opportunities will arrive that do not require you to bend your principles. Provision will meet integrity. Relational doors will shift as well. Draining connections will naturally loosen their grip. Aligned partnerships will approach with peace rather than pressure. Conversations will feel coherent instead of chaotic. You will not need to chase validation because validation will recognize you. This is not fantasy. It is consequence. Stability attracts alignment. Alignment invites opportunity. And now comes the question that heaven already knows the answer to, but you must articulate for yourself. Will you carry the weight? Will you remain faithful in the light, the same way you were faithful in the cave? Will you hold integrity when overflow increases? Will you protect your frequency when visibility expands? This is not about perfection. It is about willingness. If your answer is yes, let it be internal but firm. I will. Not loudly for performance, but steadily for alignment. That declaration shifts posture. It moves you from observer to participant, from listener to leader. You are no longer in the waiting room. Waiting rooms are for those uncertain about assignment. You have been briefed. You have been recalibrated. You have been sealed. Deployment begins when clarity replaces confusion. You will still encounter challenges, but you will not interpret them as disqualification. You will encounter resistance, but you will not internalize it as rejection, because your identity is now anchored differently. You are not striving to become the standard. The Heavenly Council has already said it through you. So walk forward as one committed. Walk forward as one commissioned. Walk forward as one deployed. The weight you feel is no longer anxiety. It is kavod. It is the gravity of authority resting where panic once lived. You do not shrink from it. You carry it. And as you carry it, others will find direction in the midst of their floods. The standard stands.